Okay, so good morning once again. Where is the PPT? Ah, okay. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So last class we were discussing about mm, the control flow graph. In short, we called it to be as CFG. All of you are tired. No sounds, nothing.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so we'll continue. I'll stop with this like graphical. Once I finish with this graphical inter representation, I'll stop with this. The next topic, the linear intermediate representation. Those things will take it after T2 exam. Okay, so starting with dependence graph. So dependence graph, which is continuation of our, which is part of our graphical representation or structural representation. So initially we discussed saying structural representation. It has got two classification. We have discussed three algorithms, that is three representations based on tree, that is parse tree, abstract syntax tree, and what was the third one? What was the third one?
Directed acyclic graphs.
Yes, directed acyclic graph. So coming to the second partition, that was graph representation. So under graph representation, we have discussed about the control flow graph. So here, okay, so control flow graph. So under control flow graph, we were discussing about each statement we have arranged, and whenever we have any loop like while loop, do while, or for statement, if you are having, then we have to rewrite it in terms of assembly code so that you can avoid having any loop, so that in your graphs we will not end up having any loops. So once you rearrange it, we were just showing the flow of control. That is from one statement to another statement, how the control flows. That was the thing what we have discussed in control flow graph. Okay. Moving on to the next one, next graph representation, which is called to be as dependency graph. Dependence graph, explicitly we discuss about data dependence graph. Okay, so under data dependence graph, as the name specify, we are going to, that is the graph what we are going to achieve here. Here the graph will be discussing about only the flow of value. That is how you are going to, when you have defined this particular variable, the value has been assigned to a particular variable, and where and all you have been used it, and which statement is updating that particular variable. So all these informations will be, that is all these things will be charted out in the form of graph. That is what we call it to be as data dependence graph. Okay. So as the definition says, a graph that models the flow of value from the definitions to uses in the code fragment. So here explicitly we will be discussing about the flow of value. Okay, we'll see one example and once again we'll come back to this particular slide. Okay, so taking one example, say you have one expression to be solved which says that a equals a multiplied by 2 which is a constant, multiplied by b multiplied by c multiplied by d. So that means a, b, c and d are variables and 2 is a constant. So you have a variable a that has been multiplied with 2, then with b, then with c, then with d, because it's a left associative, and that result will be given to the same variable a. So keeping that, how the assembly code would have been written. So assembly code would have been written in terms of, first we have to load the variable a. So from memory we are loading the variable into the register, so which is named as ra, and then we are taking the constant value 2 which has been loaded into the register r2, and then which the next variable b that has been loaded into the register rb, The next variable C, which has been loaded into the register RC. And the last variable, which is D, that is also loaded into the register RD. So just to make a representation like it's from memory. So at the rate of A. So RARP stands for the starting location of our memory. So starting location, from the starting location of our memory at the rate of A. So that means at that location of A. So from starting address of your memory plus or minus to the location of A. Whatever content you have, the value you have, that will be taken into the register RA. Similarly for the variables B, C and D, that is what will be done. And 2, which is a constant one, we don't require any information from the memory, so you are loading the immediate value into the register R2. Now we have to multiply. So left to right, association will be left to right. So we have to multiply RA with R2. So we make use of the instruction mul, that is mult, RA comma R2. So once you do this, it will be like RA equals RA multiplied by R2, and the result will be stored in RA itself. Next, when you are next statement, we have to, that result should be multiplied with B variable. So the result is already there in the register RA. So mult RA comma RB. So that result will be stored in again RA. So that has to be multiplied with register C. So mult RA comma RC. Next, last instruction for mult, which will be mult. So you are multiplying the entire result, that is A into 2 into B into C, with the contents of the register RD. And the result will be again stored in RA. So now once you are having the final result of A multiplied by 2 multiplied by B multiplied by C multiplied by D. And now you have to load it into the memory location of variable A. So for that purpose, we are making use of the store instruction. So store AI, which is the variable value of register RA into the location of A. So from the starting address location of memory RA/RP plus the location of your variable A. So at that particular location, store the content of register RA. So this is what is the instruction. So for your given expression, this is how your assembly code looks like, right? So now we have to draw the dependence graph, that is the data dependence graph for this. So how do we create the nodes? So whenever we say a graph, we know that it consists of nodes and edges. So how do we create the nodes and how do we have the edges? So that is what we will see here. So whenever I'll directly show the graph here. So for this given example, so what do we have? First thing is we have numbered it. So instead of writing the entire list, what I have done is for each variable, I have numbered it. So each variable, that is like loading the content into the register RA. So that for each statement has been numbered starting from 1 to 10. So now whatever I have drawn here, that is based on the variables. So in the first instruction, I am loading the variable of A, that is the value of A. So that is what 1 represents. And from where I am getting it? I am getting it from the address. So from memory I am going to refer. So whenever we are referring some contents from memory, we use the dotted lines. So this which is RARP from memory, this dotted lines is represented saying that you are referring the contents from memory. And that has been taken into the register, that has been taken into the instruction 1, this line number 1. After that, the second instruction, which is a constant value 2. So it doesn't depend on any memory. So if you see here, 2 has been directly taken. So this 2 has been taken as such. Okay. Now coming to the third line. Third line, here we are having the third 3, which is dependent on your memory content. So if you see RARP dotted lines for node 3. Okay. Now moving on to the fourth instruction. So when you see the fourth instruction, we have the content RARP at the rate of C. So that means we are referring the content of your value, variable value C. So which is dependent on the memory. So dotted lines from RARP to 4. After that, the last one again, which is the same, we need the content of register D. So we are taking it from the memory, so which will be 5. So fifth instruction, which is referring the memory part. So for instruction 1, 3, 4 and 5, we need the contents from memory. So dotted lines has been put, and it has been mentioned for the lines 1, 3, 4 and 5. For the line 2, it is a constant value, it is not dependent on the memory, so 2 remains as such. Okay. Till here it is fine, right? So till this line we have done. Now moving on to the next instructions, starting from sixth line. So in the sixth line, when you see, we are applying the multiplication operator onto the register RA and R2. So when I say RA, which is nothing but line number 1, right? So RA, which is line number 1, R2, which is this one, right? So combining, that is, whenever I'm creating a node, which is nothing but it is based on the operation. So I'm applying the multiplication operator and I'm getting a new value. So 6. That is what is the line number 6. So I'm dependent on the line number 1 and line number 2. Okay. So both the arrows has been pointed to line number 6. Now moving on to the line number 7. When you see line number 7, which is dependent on RA, but which line number? Is it dependent on first line? No. You will be getting the contents from sixth line. So you are having the line drawn from sixth line, that is the sixth instruction, and RA comma RB. So RB, which is there in the third line. So third line which has been initialized. So the contents of sixth line and the contents of the third line, which has been taken, which takes a form of a new form, which is getting stored in RA itself, but it is taking a new form. So seventh has been taken as such. Okay. Moving on to the eighth line, which says mult RA comma RC. When I say RA here, this RA is nothing but which is dependent on the seventh line. So you will be having an arrow drawn which creates a new node here. So RA from which has been updated from the seventh line, and RC which has been taken from the fourth line. So these two will create a new value, and which is there in eighth line. Okay, so it forms the node 8. So moving on to the next instruction, which is there in the line 9, which says multiplication of RA comma RD. So here when I am using RA, this RA is dependent, this RA, the value for RA, we get it from the line number 8. So from line number 8 and the content what we have in line number 5. So these two is getting multiplied and it forms the new value which has been stored in register RA. This 9 will be having the new content which has been stored in RA. Okay. Last line which says store instruction. So store RA content into the memory location. So now that means we are having the line number 10. So in the line number 10, you are saying store RA. So from where this RA value you will get? From line number 9. So this from this arrow you can say that RA value we are getting it from the line number 9. And where it will be stored? It will be stored in the address location of A. So address location of A means it is dependent on the memory. So that is the reason why the dotted arrow has been mentioned. So in the 10th line, you are calculating the address location of A, and the value of what you are having in the line number 9 will be stored into that address location. So like this, we are showing the value, that is the flow of value has been shown. So if for showing the flow of the variable, here we have made use of each instruction. We have just sequenced the each instruction. So we have mentioned the line number for each instruction. So based on the line number, we have drawn the graph. And if any line is dependent on the memory, that we have mentioned it to be as RARP, and we have drawn the dotted lines. Okay. Hope it is clear. When compared with control flow graph, I think it is simple, right? Any doubts? Any clarification required? Okay. So here it is just a simple one where we are having the sequence has been done one after the other, right? So now we'll move on with another example where we have a loop. Okay. So now if you see for this case, that is x equals 0. So first time we are initializing the value for x. Next statement it says I equals 1. So for the first time we are initializing the value of I. After that we have a while loop where it says I less than 10. Inside the loop we have if a of I greater than 0. So that means a of I means which is nothing but array content. If that condition is satisfied, what it is supposed to do? It is supposed to update the x value by with the addition of x with a of I. So contents of x, previous x value added with the array content, and it has to update it has to generate a new x value. Okay. After that, once you come out of that if statement, you are just incrementing the ith loop. And then once you come out of the loop, you are just displaying the value of x. Okay, so this is what you are having given scenario or code snippet. So for this you have to draw the data dependency graph. Okay, if explicitly if it is not mentioned data dependency graph, it means that it is data dependency graph itself. Okay, so dependence graph or data dependency graph. So now can you shall we try drawing the graph for this? So x equals 0. So that means first we are initializing it. So I will just say value 1. That is the node whatever I am creating, it's just 1. Next one, which is I equals 1. So it is for the first time I am initializing the value. So I will just say node 2. Okay. Now when I come for the third instruction, which is 3, when I say 3, what happens? Node 3 started. When I say node 3, it is dependent on, when I say node 3, it is dependent on which all variables?
I.
Variable I. So variable I means which is there in the node 2. So I can say, I can just draw an arrow from node 2 to 3. And 100, which is a constant, it's okay. Okay. Now moving on to the next value, that is the next line. If a of I greater than 0. So now if a of I greater than 0, a of I means I can say I will be getting it from line number 2. What about a? A means which is an array. So array means whenever we are using array, all of us know that it will always calculate from the starting address location of array. So always whenever we say the name of the array A, it will be always having the starting address location of that particular array. So it is indirectly I can say that it is address of particular array variable. So I can say A, right? So A is a memory part. So A, whenever I am having A, I can be I can just draw the dotted lines. So dotted lines A of I. So I means which is from second one. So which gives the value 4. Node 4 will be created. So now moving on to the next fifth line. So which says x equals x plus a of I. Okay. So x equals x plus a of I. So x means which is nothing but which is already initialized in the node 1. So I can take, I don't know why that line has come. So when I am creating node 5, I can create node 5 depending on the value from the node 1 and value from x part. Then I need the value from value of I. So value which is there in second line, and then value of array. So I can have a dotted line drawn like this, right? So from when I am calculating for this line number 5, I am dependent on the node 1, node 1 for the x variable, then node second node for array A, which is from memory, so dotted line. Okay. Now coming to the sixth statement, sixth line. So sixth line means which says I equals I plus 1. So here it is, one more thing, x equals x plus a of I, right? So first time x, when I am saying I am dependent on the node 1. Next a of I means I am dependent on node 2 for I variable, and a means array part, so a which is dotted line. After that I am updating my x. So when I am updating my x, where the arrow should be? It should be in a self loop here. Since I am having x equals x plus a of I, so whenever I am inside a loop, so whenever I am first time I am using my x variable which is there in the node 1, and first time I am using the I variable from node 2, and whatever array starting address location I am using it from the memory part. And once I get all these values for the first time, I am updating my x. Once I update my x, which line I will be updating? I will be keeping that value within this same loop 5. Okay. Now once I come back, come out of this loop, I mean come out of this if statement, what I have? I am having I equals I plus 1. So I have my line number 6. So for line number 6, what are the things what I should have? And first time when I'm applying this I is equals to I plus 1, it is dependent on first time when I'm calling the I value, from which node I will be getting the value? I get the I value from node 2. So first time when I'm calling this I part, I will be getting the value for I from node 2. After that, once I add I plus 1, once I do this I plus 1, I'm going to update it. So I will not once again go back to node 2. It will be later on, that is whenever I'm using the next times when I'm calling the I value, from which part I have to get? I have to get it from the newly updated one. So where will be the newly updated value? It will be lying in the sixth line itself. So there will be a self loop in the sixth node. Okay. And now if you see once again, second time when I am going into the loop, I less than 100. Okay. So line number 3. So line number 3 will be dependent on I value. So I value means it will be dependent on the content what is there in the line number 6. So arrow will be pointed to node 3. Again, if you see A of I, so A of I, when you are saying newly updated value, you have to get I, not the previous one. So you will be having an arrow pointer. I don't know why it is moving towards this direction. You will have another arrow which is dependent on the line 4, that is node 4 is dependent on the content whatever you have recently updated in node 6. After that, when you are having in the fifth line, that is x equals x plus a of I. So first time you had taken the I value from the node 2, but next time onwards when you have, you will be taking it from node 6. So you will be having an arrow drawn from 6 to 5. Okay. Now coming to the seventh line. So when I call the seventh statement, seventh line, when I create the seventh node, print x. So when I say print x, x is the variable. So x is the variable which is recently updated in node 6. Sorry, node 5. So in node 5, whatever was my recently updated x, that is already there in node 5. So from node 5, I am going to get the x value and that will be displayed. So here by using this dependence graph, we are only trying to show the flow of value. So when I say flow of value, whenever you have initialized your variable, that time the nodes would be created, or first time whenever you are using any particular variables, that particular point the nodes would be created, and each and every time you are updating the values, new nodes would be created. Sometimes some nodes would be having the self loop. Why? Because you are updating the same variables. Once that self loop has been taken care, then you have to just see whether the next time whenever you are calling, which variable you have to, that is whether the previous one or the recent one. So to get the recent one, the graph would be updated with the recent updated value. So the graph should be pointed accordingly. Okay.
Ma'am, in this, for the fifth instruction.
I'll show the proper one. Yeah.
Ma'am, for fifth instruction, it should depend on 4, no ma'am. Why are we taking it 2 and from A again? Like it's similar.
See, from for fifth node, you are saying it is dependent on fourth node. So is there any updation getting done in fourth node? If you see the fourth node, here we have a of I greater than 0. Here we are not updating the value for any of the variables, right? Here we are just using it. We are just using the I variable.
Ma'am, there we are getting the value of A of I. Okay.
We are just using it, right? We are not updating A of I.
Yes, ma'am. I understood it. Got it.
Okay. If you see here in the third line, that is the third line, if you see I less than 100. So I means you are using the value of I, which was already created. So where is I created? I has been created in the node 2. So that is the reason why this arrow has been maintained. These lines were there. That's why I was showing you the new nice graph. Okay, so this is what is the data dependence graph. Okay, hope it is clear. So one example where we have seen the sequence of graph, that is the sequence of contents, which is dependent one after the other. So the graph was drawn in this pattern. I'll just erase everything. So it was dependent one after the other. So the arrow, it was looking like a tree format. But in the second example, whatever we have taken here, in this we have a loop used. So I haven't for this particular code snippet, I haven't converted to assembly code. For this, directly I have rewritten it. Okay, I've directly drawn the dependence graph. So accordingly, according to the question given, you have to take it up for this data dependence graph. Okay. So whenever you are using any memory locations, make sure the representation would be done by using a dotted arrows. Okay. Hope it is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's move on with the next. So dependence graph. So what would be the advantage of using this type of graph? Just you can imagine where we can what are the things what we can optimize it. So usually we say by using these graphs we try to optimize the instruction, that is instruction scheduling part. So by using this control flow graph we can optimize the instruction scheduling, that is how the based on the flow of flow of the control we can just think of if you rewrite the instructions or rearrange the instructions, how it can how the timing could be improved. So similarly here here we are showing the flow of values. So when I say flow of values, here it is dependent on the data part. So I can, if I try to rearrange the elements in such a way that I can improve either I can say I can improve the instruction scheduling itself, or I can improve the register allocation. So both the things could be optimized. That is what has been told here. So data dependence graph. So here we can this will be playing a major role for applying the optimization onto the instruction scheduling. So indirectly I can say it will be optimizing the register allocation also could be done in a better way. Okay. So moving on to the next type of graph, the last type of graph, we call it to be as call graph. So it is, as the name specifies, call. So whom we will be calling usually whenever in the programming language, whenever we say call, usually we use this term call for your procedures, or I can say it to be as functions, right? So for whenever you are having in your program a procedure or function, we apply this term to be as call. So that means whenever we say call graph, this is also applied for your procedures itself. Okay. So when you are having multiple procedures, how do you graphically show which procedure, that is the flow of procedures. So for that purpose, we will be using this call graph. That is relationship from one procedure to another procedure in a given program. To represent that, we use this call graph. So I'll just show you the one example. Okay. So in this example, just see the call graph we have in this example, just I have taken one simple example for C program. So we have a main function within which we have a printf function getting called, scanf function getting called. These two are being defined in stdio.h. Next, coming to the next instructions, we have add function getting called. After that, inc function getting called. Add this add and increment function, which is user defined function. Okay. So now when you are drawing this call graph, how it will be drawn? The call graph would be drawn in such a way that from main function, usually the compilation will be starting from main. So main will be the first one which we are calling for the first time. So from the main function, we are calling the printf function, as well as the scanf function, which is already there in the stdio.h. So we have for each function which has been represented in a circular form, that is each function names has been given to be as the nodes. Okay. And so you can see here we have a printf function, we have scanf function. So from main, these two are getting called. Okay. After that, the next function what we have here, we have add function and increment function. So when you see from main function, we are calling add function as well as we are calling increment function. Okay. Now if you see add function, the definition of add function, once the add function is called, it will be executing the add function, it returns. Now coming to the increment function, it calls the increment function, then it executes. Then from increment function, we are calling once again the add function. So if you see in this graphical representation, from increment function, we are having the edge drawn towards add function. So this is what we call it to be as call graph. In detail, we will see it in the next chapter, okay? So that's why we are not going in depth about this call graph. I haven't taken much examples in this based on this call graph. Just shown you the representation of it, because coming chapter, that is procedural abstraction, there we will be discussing in detail about the call graphs and different types of examples we will be taking there, okay? So call graph, it's very simple. Just we will be having each node created based on the number of functions we have, and the edges would be pointing based on the function procedure calls or function calls, from which function to which function you are calling. So based on that, the edges would be drawn. We will not show any return address part because it is understood. So once you see this graph, it is clearly understood. From main function, you are calling printf function. So once it is done, the control will automatically go back to main function itself. So that is it is implicitly understood. Similarly, from main function, you are calling add function. So this would be once this is done, the control goes back to main function itself. Now if you see, from main function, you are calling increment function. So from increment function, we are calling add function. So once this is done, there is no more edges. So once this add function is done, the control goes back to increment function. Once the increment function is done, the control goes back to main function. So this is done implicitly. So this is what has been talked about in this call graph. So each node is nothing but each procedure, and each edge will be talking about the connectivity from one procedure to another procedure. Okay. So one simple example scenario has been given here. So from one function, say you are having a function p, and from function p you are calling in the function q 3 times. So that means you will be having 3 times three times that edges would be mentioned 3 times. So how many ever times you are calling that particular function, those many times this call in the call graph you would be mentioning it. Okay. So based on this call graph, we have two things. So usually we will be having some things which we have to take care within the procedure. When you are having a procedure call done, we will have certain things which has to be taken care within the procedure. Similarly, when you are having multiple procedures, so when you are calling each procedure, there will be certain things which you have to take care. Okay. So based on that, we have named it to be as inter-procedural and intra-procedural. Okay. As the name specifies, inter-procedural. So that means we will be having multiple procedures, and when the control moves from one procedure to another procedure, you have to take care of certain things. Say for example, if you are having any global variables. Okay. So when you are moving from one function to another function, all the functions will have access to that particular global variable. So you have to maintain it in such a way that the control will be given to all the functions. So that means whenever we are having a new procedure, that is whenever we have each and every time we are having the procedures getting called, already we didn't discuss much in detail, but we have talked about this terminology which we call it to be a symbol table. So each and every time we have a procedure getting called, the symbol table would be created, and the pointer would be pointing. That is, the pointer would be pointing when that is from main function, you are calling add function. So whenever you're calling the add function, a new symbol table would be created. And who has called this? From where you have called? From main function you have called. So you will be having a pointer pointing from main to this one. So by using this pointers, once the function definition is done, you will be control goes back. So when you say control is given back, so there will be certain things which you have to take care. Like, what are the things which you have to take care? Like return type contents, the values what you have returned. Similarly, what are the arguments which you have to maintain globally? If there is any global variable, that particular variable should have been updated. Similarly, if you are having any local variables, that connection has to be discarded from main to add once the control has been given back. Similarly, when I say intra-procedural means you would be taking care of the local variables. So when I say local variables, that means, as I said, whenever a procedure is getting called, you would be creating a new symbol table. So once the new symbol table has been created, you will maintain the details of each and every variable of that particular block or of that particular procedure. Okay, so these things we will discuss in next chapter, that is procedural abstraction. Okay, but as of now, you just have to know about these two terminologies: interprocedural and intra-procedural. So inter-procedure, which is dependent on different functions. Intra-procedure, that is certain techniques which you deal with when you have within a single procedure. Okay, but when we are discussing about this call graph, there will be certain challenges which we have to face. Like for example, each and every time, based on each language or each best practices, there would be certain ways how the compiler would have been created. Say for example, some compilers, whenever we say call graph, certain compilers would be creating only partial call graphs. So that so when we say only for that particular, only for some small portion of the procedure only would have been highlighted, rest all would be hidden, abstracted. So that means so more compilation work has to be done at the background part. So that is little challenging when we go with this procedures as such. So separately we have to take care of all those things because only small portion of your program has been highlighted. The other usual challenge which we have to face is the arguments what we have passed and what is the return type value. So that is nothing but whenever we have inter procedure from one procedure to another procedure, whenever we are calling, we will have certain values which we have to pass, that is arguments. Similarly, once that procedure is done, we have to return some values to it. So when we are returning, how the control should go back and how the connection should be discarded, that is how the connection should be removed. So all these things has to be taken care. So this is also considered to be as one of the challenge. The other challenges here, if you are talking this call graph for the object oriented programming. So whenever we say for object oriented programming, along with in the C program and all, we will have names used, different names used for different functions. But whenever we say for Java, object oriented programming means Java, C++, for all those things, we have one more thing, which is overloading concept. Say because of this overloading concept, you should make out whether you are calling any procedure or whether you are calling the same operator itself. So that means we have little more computation to be done, taken care of. Okay. Similarly, when it comes with respect to inheritance, so when we say inheritance, you will have certain connectivity, that is like from one class to another class, you will be having certain connectivity. So when we are having such type of connections, whether you are calling the parent class function or whether you are calling the child class function, all these things has to be understood properly, right? So that means background, some more computation has to be given clearly, so that when you are saying procedure call, there should not be any ambiguity existing. So background, the work should be little more. Okay, so these are the three main challenges which you come across whenever we say about the procedures or functions. So in detail, anyways, we will be discussing in the next chapter. So next is that is linear intermediate representation. We will see this after your T2 exam. Okay. This, I said, once we finish with this data dependency graph, we will just come back to the first the introduction of this dependence graph. There is nothing much, the same thing, whatever I have told. That time I forgot, I just thought of showing it. So I'm done for the class for today. So if you have any doubt, you can ask. Otherwise, we can leave. All the best for your exam, students. Monday.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, that in that list 4 members were not there. So Harshavardhan, he's with other team medicines, but his name was not there in the list. So I asked him to join the group which he was telling, and the other 3 I told them to form a group and decide the topic by today.
Okay. Thank you, Pranati.
Okay.
Because yeah, now since all of you are in 6th sem, you we expect you to fit into some of the other groups or create a new group. That's it. Since till this time they haven't joined with any other group, it will be difficult for others also to take them, because some might have started the work.
Yes, ma'am. I have asked them to form a group. I'll follow up with them once.
Yeah. So ask them to give the title by today evening itself. Otherwise, maximum by tomorrow morning, not beyond that.
Okay, ma'am.
Because now if they see the Excel sheet itself, it is more clear which topic they can't take. Everything they can see from there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay then. So all the best, students. Do well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, I didn't
Send the
Viva